Thank you for attending AWS Community Day for Australia and New Zealand. In today's session, we're going to be going through lessons learned from implementing over 100 machine learning projects. As a brief agenda for today's session, we're going to be going through a quick introduction to who I am before speaking about why you should undertake a machine learning project. We'll be then covering the three elements of a high-performing machine learning function, specifically speaking about the value creation, the people and way of working, as well as technology, before I'll answer some of your questions. So as a bit of a quick introduction to myself, my name is Kale Temple. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Intellify. I'm an honorary affiliate at the University of Sydney, and I've been working in analytics and machine learning consulting for over 5 years now. In that time, I've supervised over 50 different machine learning projects, and I also have a Masters of Economics and Econometrics from the University of Sydney, and I'm also the co-founder and organizer of PyData Sydney. If you'd like to reach out and ask me any questions, please feel free to do so through my LinkedIn. So let's get into the main meat of today's presentation. Why should an organization undertake a machine learning initiative? I see there being four key drivers. The first one is around accelerating growth or increasing profitability. And this is about optimizing or using machine learning to optimize how businesses are going to market. Examples of how this is being done is around using machine learning to do things like marketing mix optimization, pricing optimization, or some other form of lead scoring algorithm. And what you can realize is that the cost to adopt customers can substantially decrease through using machine learning techniques. The second area is that through increasing an organization's operational efficiency. And this is about helping them to do more with less. Typical use cases of machine learning in this particular space are things like inventory optimization, workforce optimization, or trying to automate the extraction of data from forms so that they could be easily put into databases through things like optical character recognition. The third value driver, or the third driver, is around improving the customer experience. And what we'd say is that as the market becomes more competitive due to this new normal that we're faced with, businesses now need to build and maintain high quality customer experiences to be able to keep their customers loyal. And this is because having high quality personalized digital experiences are now becoming expected rather than a differentiator for customers. The last driver here is about businesses being able to define and create sustainable competitive advantage. And there are different examples in the market like Netflix, like Uber, like Airbnb, where they've been able to use data and machine learning to be able to dominate and conquer markets in short periods of time. And what this means is that businesses who have yet to find a major player in their market have an opportunity to use their data and machine learning to be able to build sustainable competitive advantage. So, however, even though there are large rewards for businesses looking to do machine learning well, there are also a large amount of barriers that need to be overcome to be able to do machine learning effectively. And this is namely that few organizations have been able to build a culture around data, but also 50% of the organizations in this particular survey admitted that they're not competing when it comes to data and analytics. And what this means is that organizations that are looking to undertake a machine learning project are faced with a substantial struggle for them to being successful in building out this machine learning project or program of works. Over the next couple of slides, I will try to cover some of the fundamental pillars of successful machine learning programs based on our lessons learned in implementing over 100 machine learning use cases across different businesses and different industries. So in our view, there are three pillars to success when undertaking a machine learning program. However, these three pillars do not have an equal weighting, and we typically see organizations tend to over-index on the pillars that do not deliver the best results. So the first and most important pillar is around value creation. And what we've seen is that a lot of organizations have tried to do machine learning for doing machine learning's sake, rather than trying to use machine learning to create tangible value across the business. And what this has meant is that we've seen a lot of businesses struggle to get buy-in from the business. And when I say the business, that's people inside the business. And this has meant that they've only been able to build toy projects that have never been put into production. And this means that even if there was a small amount of value that could have been realized through these machine learning initiatives, that it hasn't come to fruition at all. And this means that when you think about developing a machine learning program, you need to think about the value creation first, and then think about the cool, the fun, and the interesting things after that. The second most important pillar is around people, and this covers both the skills but also the way of working that is required to run an effective machine learning team. The last pillar, which even though I've said here that it is the least important of the three, is still fundamentally critical to being able to do your machine learning in an effective manner. And it's crucial to not try and reinvent the wheel when it comes to undertaking your first machine learning use case, and to make sure that it is narrow and focused around the particular types of problems that you try to solve in that first use case. Specifically, we believe that the technology or the machine learning platform should be built out progressively around use cases, and you should not try to include other initiatives in your first machine learning project. Otherwise, it will potentially kill the business case, but also at the same time, it will introduce a huge amount of risks, which when you're undertaking your first machine learning project, you don't want to introduce unnecessary risks. So moving into the first pillar around value creation, we believe there's 6 considerations that should be followed when scoping and identifying your first machine learning project. The first and most important consideration is to start with a business problem rather than the technology. And this means that when you start having conversations with a business, you'll get higher levels of engagement and interaction from them. But also, it's quite critical when you start speaking about people and way of working later on, that it is important that you start embedding the business in your team. And what this means is that when you have someone, when you start working from the business problem back to the technology, when you start forming these cross-functional teams with the business embedded in them, you'll find it a lot easier to get them willing to work with you. The second is to make sure that there's at least one executive sponsor, and ideally one from the business. But ideally, the next scenario on top of that is having one from the business and also technology. And what this means is that when you start running into some things like change management issues, politics, or roadblocks, this executive sponsor will be critical in terms of you being able to overcome these types of barriers. Because even though it is a machine learning project, what you'll find is that there's a lot of typical workplace politics and roadblocks and change management issues that come along and actually kill these types of projects. The next consideration is about making sure that you dot the I's and cross the T's when it comes to building your business case. And the reason being is that we've seen a lot of stakeholders want to undertake a machine learning initiative. However, they haven't actually done the necessary due diligence in putting together that business case. And what we've found is that even though they're willing to do a machine learning project, unfortunately, when that business case is raised to senior executives inside the business, they'll unfortunately just come along and reject it, which means that the machine learning initiative or project comes along and gets killed, which means it's very critical to make sure that you have a well-structured business case. The other thing here is that the business case serves as a true north for the project, and hence it's critical to make sure that in the scoping phase, when you put together that business case, that you clearly articulate what is the true north for the project and what are you trying to achieve. Because what you'll find is that the project team will use this as a reference throughout the project. The next consideration is around making sure that you work on the most critical issue or the most critical use case to your business for your first machine learning use case. And this could be based on a number of factors. Common mistakes here are about trying to tackle the most valuable use case in the first initiative, which could also be the most complex initiative. And what this means is that the risks that are undertaken in that first machine learning project are too high, and that means that we've actually seen a lot of customers fail when they've tried to implement these machine learning projects, because they ended up biting off more than they could chew for the first initiative. The next initiative is around time boxing use cases. And what we've seen here is that too many businesses are trying to flog dead horses when it comes to the machine learning use cases. What we would say is that there's a trade-off in terms of pulling the pin too early on a use case, but also making sure that there's enough time to prove out the viability of a solution that would have real business value. And what we would say is that we believe the maximum time period to prove out the value of a machine learning use case, including having some form of productionized minimum viable product, should be 12 weeks. The last point here is also around making sure that when you complete your machine learning project and you put it into production, that there are a way for you to be able to make sure that you can measure and capture the benefits. The reason being is that when you want to transition from your first machine learning use case to your second machine learning use case, being able to reference the benefits from the first machine learning use case are going to be critical in getting the buy-in for that second, third, and fourth machine learning initiative. Moving on from value to people, one of the questions that we are commonly asked is, what do we need to hire when building a successful machine learning team? And what we find is that too many people believe that a successful machine learning team looks like an individual, and that is a unicorn with software engineering skills, with really good theoretical data science skills, who can communicate well, who can engage the business, and who can write business cases. And what we've actually seen work well in the real world is the fact that when you have a well put together team who serve a well put together team where there's clear roles defined that essentially serve different purposes, is a more productive team in terms of actually helping put together a well structured machine learning function. And what you should start with is, ideally, what are the skill sets that we need inside our business to be able to build out a proper machine learning project or program of works. And what you would typically find is that there's a gap, and that gap could be in terms of core skills that are needed. What we would say is that we would find that people would go into the business, they would find the best fit for those solutions, and people would be expected to upskill in terms of these roles. And then worst comes to worst, if people couldn't upskill internally, there would be a need to then to hire people and bring them into the organization to be able to create this team. However, when we start speaking about hiring people into a machine learning team, what we would say is that attitude is more important than skills. And this is something that we practice internally at Intellify when we do hire. And what we would recommend is actually over-indexing on some of the engineering skills rather than the algorithmic development skills. And the reason being is that what we've typically found is that you can find a lot of people who can build and train algorithms in the Australian market. However, there are very few people who can come along and productionize and deploy algorithms and monitor them effectively. And that is the hardest skill set to hire for, or to essentially build internally. So if you're going to over-index in any of these skills, think about those who are going to be more engineering oriented. So that being said, if you started speaking about what are those types of values that should be embodied in a data scientist or data science or machine learning team, when you look at hiring people, we see that there's four main values. The first is that they're builders. And when we say that they're builders, these are people who enjoy getting hands-on with different tools and building different things. It could be web apps, it could be pet projects, it could be software engineering projects, but they are fundamentally people who enjoy getting on the tools and writing code and building software. The second thing is that they're curious. This here is that there are many things that people don't know in data science and machine learning, and what a curious person will do is to constantly strive to be able to find ways to answer these questions, but also to improve their own knowledge. The third is about finding people in this machine learning team who want the model to go into production. And the reason being is that it's critical to hire people who want to be able to build something that delivers value to the organization on an ongoing basis. We've seen too many times that organizations have hired really good research and development, data scientists and machine learning engineers. And what that has meant is that there's a whole bunch of work that's undertaken, and they essentially put it into a PowerPoint deck, and then they put it on a shelf, and then it's never looked at again. You need to start thinking about how hiring people who want to see their work go into production. And the last thing is about making sure that people who are coming into this team are focused on the value creation side of things rather than just the pure technical excellence. And what we've found is that as long as you're hiring for these four different attitudes, there will be quite a good cultural fit in terms of your team, but also in terms of you being able to put together this high productive machine learning team. So a couple of last comments in terms of the way of working for people is that machine learning projects should be around producing products, not projects. And this is just a realization that people need to realize that they're trying to build long-term products, not projects. And this is essentially if the product is proven successful in the validation phase, that it's something that's going to be inherited by the business and it's going to be used by them on an ongoing basis, and it has to be essentially refined and improved over time. The other point here is around using agile cross-functional teams, and what you'll find with the unknown unknowns in delivering machine learning projects, it's critical that you use an agile way of working, but also to be able to deliver an effective machine learning product because it's business oriented, but also there's different skill sets needed. You need to start developing an internal capability to be able to manage and run effective cross-functional teams. And the last thing is that when you iterate these teams against something, make sure that it's a business objective rather than a technical capability. So moving on to the last pillar, it's around technology, right? And the main takeaway here is that we've seen a lot of organizations try and boil the ocean in their first machine learning project. And what we would strongly recommend is that customers should be trying to leverage their existing machine learning platforms that are built on open source technologies before trying to build their own machine learning platforms or going down the path of proprietary platforms. And that rather than trying to build this machine learning platform in one go, even if we're talking about existing machine learning platforms, you should be thinking about extending and automating your machine learning platform progressively based on multiple use cases that you're delivering over time, rather than trying to build the state-of-the-art machine learning platform first and then thinking about the use cases. Some of the things that we've seen come along and kill machine learning projects is when people have tried to lump other enterprise initiatives into the machine learning projects. And this is typically around data quality, data governance, or other types of data initiatives. And what this means is that people get distracted, or the value gets diluted, or that a lot of the risks that were present in the machine learning project end up being exacerbated by just including too much in that project. And lastly, and this speaks to the some of the points I've raised earlier, it's around don't build a platform and hope that they'll come. Make sure that it's around delivering value to the business, but also make sure that you include the business from day one. And this will be really quite critical to make sure that you build the right technology solution for your projects. So the only other thing that I would call out is that when you're trying to build out machine learning solutions on AWS, it's critical that you understand the different types of patterns that you could build out that solution based on. And what we would say is that if you effectively understand the capabilities of AWS machine learning services, is that you're in a really good position to be able to get started with machine learning. And a good example about making sure that you understand what are the different machine learning options available on Amazon Web Services is the fact that we've seen some customers want to undertake custom machine learning projects where the business case would never have supported a custom machine learning solution built on SageMaker. And the only way to make these types of projects viable is through using things like audit ML based solutions. So things like Amazon SageMaker Autopilot, or for example, Amazon Comprehend, or Amazon Forecast, or Amazon Personalize. And what this means is that you need to understand what are you trying to achieve and the constraints that you're working with, as well as the functional requirements of the solution. And realistically, you should be picking the different parts of the machine learning solutions available to you on Amazon Web Services for that particular use case. So, as a bit of a wrap up from today's session, what are the key takeaways? So, the first and most important takeaway is that value is the most important component of your machine learning program. The second is to identify business problems, validate them well, and to make sure that you have the support in the business, especially at the exec level. If you don't nail that essentially concise summary of engaging the business, you will really struggle to prove out your first use case as well as future use cases. The third point is around that machine learning teams are more effective than individuals who can perform machine learning. And what this means is that you should focus on building rather than buying an effective team by identifying what skills you need to have internally, and then making sure that you coach and mentor and use those 4 different values to get people to improve. The second last point is around hiring for attitude first and skills second, and the reason being is just the depth of the market in Australia. And then lastly, don't overcomplicate the technology aspects of machine learning, of a machine learning project from day one. Focus on the delivery of value. As I said, technology is a critical part of delivering machine learning effectively. But what we find sometimes is that people get too caught up on the technology of the machine learning project. And because of that, they don't actually deliver the value component, which is the most critical, nor do they necessarily have the people to come along and deliver the solution to the business as well. So I'm going to now open it up to question and answers, and I just want to leave you with a bit of a proverb around people who ask questions is a fool for 5 minutes, but the person who does not ask remains a fool forever. So please do not feel free. Do not feel embarrassed by asking any questions. Thank you.